And welcome back to KTM Business today. Before we went to break, we obviously hearing that story about the government looking to tap their Middle Eastern market or tapping into Islamic finance through a Sukuk bond slated to be issued sometime next year. And just to help us perhaps put a great understanding of what Islamic finance is all about, I'm now joined by Yahya Rehman, the division manager at the Islamic Development Bank, and Rahma Hersi, managing partner at Awal Consulting. Lady and gent, if I was just to ask you the basic nuance about Islamic finance, if I was just to start with you, Rahma, how would you describe it to the layman who perhaps has not heard of Islamic finance before?
Well, Islamic finance is basically ethical finance. All it cares about is how do we, tap into a market that is socially just and equitable, both for the ones financor and the ones also going to get the finance. So in a nutshell, it really is about ethics and justice.
Hold the same sentiments, yeah?
Yes, I mean, essentially it comes down to ethical finance, but then there are some other features of it. One, it is always linked to a real economic activity.
Yeah.
It is backed by real assets. So in that sense, when we're talking about linking the real economy and the financial economy, I think Islamic finance believes in that linkage to exist, and for finance to be used as a means of socio-economic development.
Okay, now Islamic finance market has been touted to have in excess of somewhere between $2 trillion in as what countries can be able to tap. When you talk about tapping into real economic growth aspects out there, when you look at Kenya, where we are so infrastructure driven, is it perhaps one of those areas that one could look to actually look at tapping the Islamic financial model and actually seeing, look, here is something that can actually lead to real gains on the ground if we tap some of these finances?
I think one thing which I think we need to clear up front is that the Islamic financial universe is much more diverse than just Sukuk, which is just one instrument in a menu of a very wide-ranging instruments and tools. So definitely for infrastructure development, there is a natural fit between the Sukuk instrument and the infrastructure needs that Kenya has. But beyond that, when it comes to the retail markets, to the SME market, to microfinance, Islamic finance has a wide range of options and instruments that can facilitate SME growth, employment creation, all the way to the financing of infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
So definitely there is a way of mobilizing and financial intermediation that can facilitate the fulfillment of the needs of the economy. But that has to be seen as across the spectrum, not just in terms of one aspect, which is more well known and kind of more well publicized, I would say.
All right, Rahma, if I was just to ask you, obviously Islamic finance has existed in Kenya for quite a bit now. We've seen about, I think, 5 major banks have Islamic windows within them. We have 2 banks that are fully Islamic financing. We've also seen people do takaful insurance. So when you look at the whole matrix of where Kenya is positioned in terms of even having that access to Islamic finance, are we there yet?
Absolutely. I think maybe to put it this way, we're not there yet, but we're on the right track.
Yeah.
Islamic finance has existed in this country for the last 10 years. And in that time, we have seen huge strides insofar as, the financial institutions, everybody, all the commercial banks want to tap into the Islamic finance industry. So, and now that we actually have our regulators setting up a legal framework with the capital markets and the other joint regulator, they have a project management office. That means then, it can only get better. Islamic finance has existed primarily in a vacuum in our country. Yeah. But nonetheless, we are working towards setting up more substantive frameworks. So we are on the right path.
Double-pronged question I'm going to ask to the both of you is that in the whole conversation that's been held around Islamic finance is that it's been touted as a cheap source of financing and looking like a quick fix solution to some of the problems you're dealing, even as an individual or even as a government. So if I was just to start with Rahman and just come into Yahya, perhaps is that the same notion, or is it a misconception of how people should be able to use Islamic financing?
Well, I think I'd also answer that in this manner. It's definitely not a cheap solution, because cheap then means that either corners are being cut, yeah, or there are certain processes are not being followed. What I would say in terms of Islamic finance being a solution that we need as a country and globally, it is an alternative way of getting your resources or mobilizing your resources. So in terms of that, it is a solution, whether it is a quicker, fixed problem. I think that's yet to be determined, because Islamic finance does pay a lot of attention to due diligence, and that's part of what the industry is all about. There's a lot of transparency, which gives the clients and the financiers a lot of comfort. So there wouldn't be room for example, of not knowing what your assets or what the transactions are all about. And so Islamic finance is a solution. And currently globally it's being found to be a growing solution to a lot of our issues. In fact, Christine Lagarde, the head of IMF, said that Islamic finance could be used as a tool to stabilize financially our financial institutions. That means that there has been a recognition that it has a huge role to play. So I would say it's, it is a solution, and it's becoming a lot more of a viable solution for a lot of people.
Yeah, hey, your thoughts on the same?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that there's a misconception that it is just a cheap way of financing, of access to financing. Instead, what I would say is that Islamic finance is a more robust, more equitable, more fair, more prudent, more responsible, more participative, more inclusive form of finance. So I think we need to look beyond. I understand that financial intermediation is about bringing savers and investors together and providing that platform, and Islamic finance does that. However, having said that, I think the features and what Rahma was referring to in terms of Christine Lagarde and the other conventional markets have realized that the fundamentals and the characteristics of Islamic finance are such that not only in terms of access to finance, but in terms of the other features that I mentioned in terms of equity, fairness, robustness, and providing greater stability to the overall financial system, whether be it national or at the global level. I think Islamic finance is something that we need to seriously consider, and it has become it's no longer a niche. It's a mainstream form of alternative financial intermediation.
But just talking about that, obviously there are a lot of linkages between Islamic finance with obviously what's oil riches that exist. Now with currently where oil prices are heading, obviously they are set to rebound. But as you position that, is it the same? Are you finding the same kind of adaptability? Are you finding that people are more increasingly looking for Islamic finance solutions? Or what's happening at the moment in as far as the relation with oil money is concerned?
I see. I think one of the key features and one of the good characteristics of Islamic finance is it's linked with the real economy.
Yeah.
And the real economy undoubtedly would go through ups and downs, and it goes through recessions and booms. Now what Islamic finance is good at is kind of realigning the financial market with the real economy. So in times of boom, you have excess profits, but you'll have less speculation. In times of downturns, you would have less severe impact on the economy, because the financial economy moves in alignment with the real economy, which is sometimes not the case in terms of the conventional markets. So I think Islamic finance, over the few financial crises that we've had globally, has proved its viability and robustness. And I'm sure that during this downturn, in terms of the oil price, Islamic finance, as I mentioned, is not just a form of cheap access to liquidity, but it is going to prove its worth in terms of creating that partnership, bringing the resources together, and ensuring that the risk and reward is shared across all the participants in the market. So absolutely, I would say that it still has a role to play, and still there is a much more relevance, and I think this is the test of time that Islamic finance has stood before, and I'm sure that it's going to come out stronger.
All right, Rahman, let me just ask you a simple question as far as the way it's been, Islamic finance has happened in this country. Well, we hear all about, especially if you're going to a bank, there's no interest attached to credit if you're going for credit per se. But if you just look at it, and if you're able just to break it down for someone like me who has had zero interaction with what Islamic finance could be, if I was to come to an Islamic window, or even go to any of the Islamic banks here, Islamic finance banks here, what should I be willing to know that would actually make me understand and actually see that it's actually a viable way of actually financing some of the needs that I have right at the moment?
Absolutely. So in terms of the unique characteristics of Islamic finance is, one, there is a profit and loss sharing system that's implemented there. So obviously, as somebody who's going in to get financing, it gives me comfort to know that the risk is shared. It wouldn't be completely on my end. And if something does happen, as long as I wasn't negligent and that can be proven, then the bank, as my partner in this transaction, has to bear some of that liability. So going in right away, it feels already it's very equitable in that sense. And then secondly, I think when it comes to investments, conventionally, as long as you can pay back the loan, it doesn't really matter where you go and invest or do your business. Yeah. Islamic finance comes in to restrict that and says, look, it's not just about you, the individual. We have a certain obligation to the community and to people. And I think as a mother, as a woman, as a Kenyan, as a person who cares about my community, it does make a difference that if I go in, that there will be certain investments that will be restricted. For example, you cannot open a casino in a suburb, in my neighborhood. And though you can afford it and it's possible,
is it the right thing to do?
Is it the right thing? So the argument might be, but why would you want to have that moral question? But nonetheless, I think, as I said, as a mom, as a family, I would be concerned because I don't want that my children being exposed to that, for example, or my family members. And the same thing, whether it's liquor, whether it's pornography, whether it's weapons, because ultimately it's about the community and the betterment of the community. So I think that gives anybody general comfort, and going into those transactions would give me some thought to say it's not just about the amount of money that I'm being given for the work that I'm doing. Thirdly, I would say that I would understand that money is not a commodity. Yeah. It is just a medium of exchange. And going into that, as Yahya said, it has to be tied to a real asset. It has to be a real economy, that it's connected to, and that gives me comfort when I'm, going into that, because it means that you're giving back. Whatever is being, depicted outside there, it's real. Yeah. It's not just speculation. We don't own things that don't exist, because this eventually will hurt our markets, and it has, which is why we suffered a crisis, right, of what we're still trying to recover from globally, and obviously right here in Kenya. So those are the things I would consider going into the bank.
All right.
Yeah.
Many thanks, and perfect place to end that conversation around Islamic finance. Hopefully we're able to get a better understanding of how it works and perhaps how then it actually touches the real economy. That has been Yahya Rahman from the Islamic Development Bank, and Rahma Hersi, managing partner at Awal Consulting, just helping put us that into perspective. We wind up this edition of KTN Business Today, but don't forget, tomorrow we'll be here same time, same place, just bringing you more of what's happening in the business world. Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming.